Hi, this is Tyson Bailey, and this is my unit presentation for EDU 380, Digital Literacy and Technology. I am recording this using Screencast-O-Matic, and right now, as you can see, we are looking at my course management site. Um, the unit of study I chose was the Cold War. I set up a 15-day unit that would include some introductory presentation, a digital story, a web quest, and finally a unit test. Um, and let's leap right into the digital storytelling section because that's was really the sort of first stuff that I had done. I had worked on creating a digital story, A Nation Divided, Germany during the Cold War, as an example um, for students to build on in creating their own digital stories. Um, the idea for my digital story unit was for students to create um, their own sort of mini lessons to share information with each other about a particular subject they were interested in the Cold War. To help them along with this, I created a flipped lesson and the outline for a series of flipped lessons that would take them step by step through the digital storytelling process, beginning with lesson one, the layout, which would go over the outline and how to structure their story. Lesson two was how to collect the media, the graphics and music for the digital story. And lesson three would be bringing it all together and creating a cohesive story and talking about the narration, using the software, that sort of thing. I created a Today's Meet chat for students to exchange ideas and resources. And finally, at the end of the digital storytelling section, the idea was for them to take an online quiz on Socrative.com in order to gauge how much to gauge A, that they watched the videos, and B, how much they were able to get from it. The idea was to base the questions in the quiz on information presented in each digital story. So each digital story would get their own question. They were multiple choice, true, false, short answer, that sort of thing. Um, then, with the web quest, we narrowed the scope from uh, broad stories and ideas with global reach to a more narrow sort of scope on the everyday lives of Soviet and American teenagers during the period. So I created the Soviet Pen Pal web quest, which the idea was um, for students to take on the character of both an American student during the Cold War and a Soviet student that were um, pen pals. So the students would research various aspects of life during the period. Um, I've on the web quest I have various resources about um, life growing up in the Soviet Union, but further resources would be given in class about life as an American teenager during the Cold War, Soviet and American propaganda, that sort of thing. And students would be asked to take those materials and interpret how they might affect perspective of a student during that period. They would first write a letter from the perspective of an American student. Then those letters would be handed out amongst each other, and then they would write a response to a letter that they had gotten from an American student from the perspective of their Soviet pen pal. Then, once those letters were completed, uh, the students would then be introduced to each other and they would discuss um, the experiences and the insights that the unit had given about themselves, about life during the period, and how the people who lived during that period viewed each other. The idea is to create a sort of empathy and an understanding of everyday life during that period, which is something I think is not touched on often enough over the course of uh, our historical studies in schools. So that's where the unit would sort of culminate. Um, Everything would come together, and then there would be a comprehensive unit test that would cover everything that we went over with essay questions, multiple choice questions, that sort of thing. Um, Overall, this has been an interesting experience for me. Um, I grew up in the 90s, so there was a lot for me as a young person. There was a lot of exploration on the web at first. I was very much into creating websites and that sort of thing. So, like for instance, the CMS came rather easy to me, especially because there was no coding. Um, Back then I had done a lot of the HTML coding, which was very basic HTML. It was very, very, very funky. But as capabilities grew, both in the amount of data that could be processed and what could be done on the internet, I sort of lost track because I live in a rural area. We didn't have internet access. So being able to sort of revisit what we are capable of now online, such as in the with the digital story, that sort of thing. Um, it was a really good experience for me because I was able to sort of rekindle my love of digital expression. I had never created a YouTube video. I had never created a digital story. I had, never done any of these things before I touched on this, and I was surprised with how easy it came, given that I hadn't really done much of it in so long. Um, I struggled with the web quest, mainly because I think I didn't give it the attention it needed. But I think it's an extraordinarily useful tool in directing student research and giving them tasks that are non-traditional for the academic classroom. Um, I took a fairly traditional approach to it, although I tried to give it a little bit of a role-playing element that would allow students to sort of embrace um, another perspective and to take on another role. I tried to give students freedom to sort of create characters and not just, create a Cold War American and a Cold War Soviet version of themselves, but allow them to sort of work with it. Um, but I think if I had a chance to do it differently, I might have done something more along the lines of uh, maybe sort of creating a a sort of diplomatic negotiation project. Um, but there are any number of things that we could touch on. I'm not really going to go into that here, but um, to conclude everything, I would like to say that this class has been really handy in sort of reopening my eyes to what digital technology is capable of, and sort of giving me a foundation from which to build on as I look to move into my classroom going forward. Some of these things I will use, and there are other ideas that I came up with that I would like to tackle, including a sort of social media integrated flipped lesson format called Selfie Social Studies that I will build upon as I move forward. Um, but overall, um, I think this class has been really good in showing a different way for us to engage with our students, and I hope to use it going forward. So I've used up my allotted time, so thank you very much, and good night.